Hello, everybody. I am thrilled to introduce Victoria Thain Gioia, co-founder and co-CEO of Perelel, to join me for a conversation about the brand and its approach to women's health. Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Hi, good thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course, so good to have you. So of course, Perelel has many different kinds of vitamins that approach women's health at many different stages of a woman's life, and we're going to get into all of that. But I'd love to hear about really at its base, at the most basic level, what does women's health mean to the brand, and how do you guys think about that?
I think that's a great question and sort of who we are as a brand because, you know, when we think of women's health, I think we think of it very broadly speaking of how it encompasses all things to support and care for women. There's the healthcare piece of that, but it's really every element of education, awareness, advocacy, understanding, and really seeing this woman. And so we are a vitamin company, but I think we really think of ourselves as more. And we named ourselves Perelel because we want to be parallel to where this woman is throughout all these pivotal changes throughout her life cycle and her hormonal changes. And so, we do this through products, but we also do it through content, community, and connection, and really seeing this woman where she is and making sure that she has the understanding and tools to support herself. And it's been very interesting working in the women's health space over the last several years, where there has been a lot more conversation on this and a much bigger focus on the gaps in women's health research, you know, acknowledging the complexity of women's bodies. Women are not small men, even though at times I think we've sort of been treated that way. Women were excluded from clinical trials from 1977 to 1993. It took over a decade to really see changes. Less than 11% of funding from the NIH has gone to women's health research. There's a massive gap here. And with that gap, I think we're missing key complexities to a woman with hormonal stages, life cycle stages, menstrual health, reproductive care. And so we really created this to look at those gaps and see women as kind of a whole category, not just healthcare, but also like all the stages of that, from advocacy and awareness and understanding body literacy. Can you understand what's going on with your body so you can better support yourself? So it's been really exciting to have more of a conversation about women's health and being able to do more for this woman just by giving her some basic education about what's happening with her body.
There is, such, like you said, a gap in education. And you guys really cater to stages that are less talked about in women's reproductive journey specifically. You have a vitamin pack specific to egg freezing, various stages of, preconception, postconception, etc. For something like egg freezing that is just coming the past couple of years more and more talked about, how did a product like that come to be part of the collection?
Yeah, so we create products leveraging our doctor's insight. So to take a step back, we have a medical co-founder, Dr. Bayati, who's a practicing OBGYN, as well as a panel of doctors who are practicing doctors and practitioners across the country, from reproductive endocrinologists, maternal fetal medicine specialists, as well as naturopathic doctors and doulas and the like. And they are giving us feedback on a almost daily basis of what they're seeing in their patients. And then we have the feedback from our customers, what they're asking for. And we have our own personal lived experiences. And we leverage all of that to how can we create the best products for this woman. And the egg freeze pack specifically really came about from just that. We launched with 5 products across this motherhood journey for this woman, from fertility with our conception support pack, a pack for each trimester, and then a postpartum pack called our Mom Multi Pack, and really seeing those stages. And we work really closely with a reproductive endocrinologist based out of New York. And he called me one day and he was like, I just had a patient in my office. I was telling her to take the conception support pack. We're starting her IVF journey. It's been a long road. And I could see the hurt in her that conception had failed her. She had failed at conceiving. And then I was giving her this pack that said conception on the label. And that didn't land right. And then when you're going through egg freezing or IVF, like you actually should not get pregnant. You've created too many follicles. That's a dangerous situation. And he was like, what can we do to better, to just improve that emotional experience, which is actually so important when you are going through that journey. And it just sparked such a big conversation because we'd actually, in the conversation of launching Peril with the 5 products, the conception support pack was really important from our own lived experiences, whether you've tried to conceive or you've lost a pregnancy. It really sucked to be looking at a bottle that had a baby on it or said prenatal or said something of somewhere that you weren't and you were trying so desperately to be there. So the conception pack was so unique in that. And then we realized we totally missed this other woman and her experience. And so we were like, okay, well, let's better support that woman. And then I was able to talk to him of saying, okay, let's say we want to create a product specific to her who's egg freezing, going through IVF, that specific journey. What of her needs are different than someone who might be going through the conception journey? And it got us sort of ideating and into product development to create something very specific for that woman from both, an emotional perspective, but also from a product perspective. We could better target ingredients that could support her when we weren't worried about an early stage pregnancy.
That's so interesting. Of course, it is such an emotional space that you are dealing in and of course, physical health and mental health are inextricable. To the opposite end of a woman's, life cycle, menopause, perimenopause, I feel like they come up in my inbox, 50 times a day in the past couple of years. Having a moment, to say the least, although that feels quite ridiculous, as obviously these things have always been a part of a woman's life. How have you seen the increased conversation about these topics impact the business and uh, the awareness of your customer and the way that she shops the line.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really incredible. I think when we launched the business 5 years ago and we were talking about women's health and we were, more in the motherhood journey, but it was still taboo. And we got told, we got asked, how big is this market anyways? And we are like, well, it's women, so probably a big market. Like it was truly incredible to us of how dismissed the category of women's health and women and both women having children, not having children, aging, like it wasn't a opportunity. And now I think because there's so much more conversation on menopause, perimenopause, like what's actually happening to women, there's this, women's health has become this hot investment area and people are really excited about it and actually realizing that women are not a niche market, which is great. And then I think for us, we are very aware of the conversation and on like the trends and what pops up, especially around ingredients, given we're in the supplement category and it's very ingredient heavy. But we really don't want to be trend based. And so going back to kind of like the earlier conversation, it's what are our doctors seeing? What are their patients asking them? What are our lived experiences? And for us specifically, we had the benefit of Dr. Biotti, our medical co-founder, was going through her own perimenopausal journey. And so we've been working on Perelel for the last 5+ years. And, over the last 3 years, she's been going through these changes herself as a doctor, as an OBGYN, and realizing like how little education there was, like how could we better support this woman? There's I won't go down this rabbit hole, but a whole storyline on like hormone replacement therapy and it being kind of bad, then good, then bad, then good again, and how you can actually better see and support this woman. And at the baseline of it, it is also the education, going back to kind of women's health and sort of helping women understand what they're going through. And so it's been exciting that this is more of a conversation for us because we are leaning into that and that's been what we've been doing and we have more space and we don't have to tiptoe as much. And, now a lot of investors want to put money to play in this space. But we don't really want to ever do something just because it's on trend, but we do it because it's supporting our women. And I think in the perimenopause space, as there's been more conversation, more education, we are all acknowledging that this is not happening to women in a vacuum. This is happening much earlier. Perimenopause is similar to puberty. It's a long process, it's a long phase of hormonal shifts, of ups and downs, of the complexity of women as a whole, and understanding our hormones and what we're going through. And so, we recently launched a perimenopause support product to better support this woman, and knowing that we have her, she's having children later in life, she's moving into this life stage, and it's not just this one moment in time in your 50s, it's a massive transformational shift for women that starts in your early 40s.
Does the brand work with creators in those demographics, influencers, to sort of help educate those demographics who absolutely are consuming social media, but typically so much of that conversation revolves around Gen Z and TikTok. And if so, how has that impacted the business?
We haven't leaned into the influencer creative market just now. I think we have historically and will always be fairly sensitive on these categories. And how does this woman want to engage? How are we respectful of sometimes sensitive categories? I think how we've sometimes approached pregnancy loss or even fertility, fertility is a hard place for a quote unquote influencer to play in. That's very vulnerable. And so it's kind of a tricky category, even though it can be for education. And we're sort of seeing the same within the perimenopause space. So I think we're more on a baseline leaning into education, coming from trusted resources, coming from our doctors, coming from Dr. Biotti as the foundation for how we broach this topic. And then sort of figuring out, how does this woman want to be spoken to in this category? What is she open to? What is she comfortable with? And that will come. But I think for us as a brand and who we are, we always lean first on sort of our doctors and, research backed education and really credible sources to start.
It's a good segue because as I thought about this conversation, I was thinking about all the sort of red tape that you have to deal with when selling vitamins. There are, of course, limits to what you guys can say. Ideally, there are studies that you can, pay for yourself that help you talk about the product to the consumer. What have been some of the challenges that the brand has faced in that department? What have you, chosen to invest in that department? And how have you overcome some of those challenges, or what have been some of your wins in that space?
Yeah, it's a really interesting category to play in because, like, on the one hand, I think there's this belief that like it's totally unregulated, anyone can do whatever they want. There's this snake oil salesman, these magic bullet pills. And then on the other hand, like, it is actually a regulated category. Like, you have to be really careful about what you say. There are rules and regulations around that. Like, you need to justify claims. Um, there are brands that choose to play on either side of this spectrum, which again makes it challenging to compete in the space. So I think for us, like, on the baseline and what you sort of said, and like doing clinicals are a really important part of our roadmap and core to what we want to do and build into as a brand. But as you mentioned, they are very expensive and they are time consuming. You can't, they take time to show the efficacy and to do correctly. And so it's hard to launch a brand, build a brand with the time that it takes to do that on the side. So I think for us, we've stayed in our lane. We don't play we're not pushing the barriers, like we're not trying to make some wild claims. We really lean into supplements are just that, like supplements to a healthy diet. There's no magic bullet. We especially wouldn't want to say something like that, make any claims like that in the fertility category. or in the perimenopause category. Like there's no magic bullet that is going to change your hormones. And I hope that we can all be very clear on that today and sort of change what's happening to your body. So I think for us, what we lean into is just what are the like baseline steps that we can do as a brand as we work on leaning into more of the clinicals and having the ability to invest more there and spend more time there. And so, the first things that we did, which hopefully now are more baseline, I'm not totally sure, but third party testing every lot, not skip lotting too. There are some loose regulations around third party testing. You can say that you do that, but you don't have to do every lot and every batch. And so those were kind of hard lines in the sand for us. And I think that comes from us being moms and women who felt failed by this category and really wanted to know, like, I want the products I take to be tested for everything. And so that was just kind of non-negotiable for us, regardless of the cost of all of that testing. And so that was something that we started out with, and every ingredient had research behind it. Our doctors who they have their own credibility on the line supporting this product. So they have to feel comfortable with every ingredient we put in there, everything that we say. If we post something on social media that goes too far and one of our doctors doesn't like it, they let us know and we immediately take it down. And so always making sure that we have like a true credible research backing to what we say and what we do has been really core. And then, you know, I'm very excited to the growth that we've had and giving us the ability to invest a lot more in the clinical side of things to really demonstrate the efficacy and importance of not only our products, but these types of products in general. Like supplements can create mistrust, but they're actually incredibly beneficial.
So interesting how it's all, interconnected. Of course, more people wanting to invest in the menopause space actually leads to you guys being able to invest in increased testing. Um, our last question, you alluded to, how crowded this space has become, and there are, more ri brands that are more rigorously testing versus less rigorously. How has Perelel been able to build loyalty as this category becomes ever more crowded? And how have you used new products to build the business? What can you tell us about the size of the brand and its growth potential as you continue?
Yeah, and I think sort of how we've connected with this consumer and building that loyalty and it goes back to everything I said is sort of we really stick to our core values and our core principles in everything we do in every touch point. And so everything has to be doctor backed and approved and vetted by our panel of doctors so that nothing is going to feel slimy and is going to have research behind it. And so that we always maintain this level of trust with our consumer. I think also authenticity is such a buzzword today, but we were this woman, we are this woman still. I have a lot of children. I've gone through the ups and downs of this journey. And, for the first year, like I answered every single customer service ticket, and we continue to be really focused on how we show up for this woman, how we connect with her, how we engage with her, and how we see her. And I think that goes through every touch point as well as the products that we create and how they really resonate and how it feels like they are created to support her and her journey. And so I think as we develop products, we're really focused on them being either customer led or sort of doctor led, but driven by a real need to create something different that is missing for this customer. And because of that, I think it's been really exciting for us. We've more than doubled the business every year since inception. We've grown from 5 products at launch to 21 products today. And we're both expanding who we can serve and then expanding, deepening how we can serve her. We've launched a protein powder, which I don't think was originally on our roadmap. It's not in the traditional category of supplements, but through this trust that and relationship we've built, we've been able to move into that and have it really take off in the last month, which has been really exciting.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.